Today's session is titled Making Sense of Cannabis Related Data. And we are going to try and not kill the mood too much by talking about the boring subject of data and how it can be leveraged from a competitive standpoint. But with everything that is involved in a cannabis business, today we really just want to highlight some of the ways that you can capture, analyze, and act upon data from various sources. Hence the reason for the session title, Making Sense of Cannabis Related Data. So my goal here is to give you, an overview of data collection methods and analyzation techniques and how you can action some of those. Um, just a bit of background on myself. I am the head of design for GoGo Canna. We are a software developer and product manufacturer based out of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. We primarily focus on the supply chain and post-sales tracking of wholesale cannabis in Oklahoma and Missouri, where we track approximately 3,500 wholesale cannabis transactions a month. Our business is very data intensive. We are tracking a lot of data as it relates to routes. And we'll talk about this here in a little bit, but as it relates to routes, drivers, compliance type related data. And that's, one of the reasons why I think I was asked to speak on this subject. For myself personally, my career has been very much involved in highly regulated industries, financial services, regulated, pharmaceuticals and cellular therapies, highly regulated, and aviation as well, which is regulated, but based off of recent events, could use a bit more enforcement, given some of the recent history here in the United States. But I do understand process management. I understand tracking of processes, human processes, and the integration of human processes and software to get into a more software-driven processes where you can control some of that and automate a bit as well. So just a quick overview of Oklahoma and how representative of the U.S. market it is. We're a bit skewed. Again, our software products focus on the supply chain, so we do service a large portion of the businesses that you're seeing outlined here, as well as providing some order management as part of our solution. So we do engage directly with growers, processors, and dispensaries on a daily basis in Oklahoma and Missouri. As of August of 2021, Oklahoma had 12,000, just over 12,000 licensed businesses in the state. A large majority of those are people with commercial growing licenses. Oklahoma did not have any um, cap on the number of business licenses that were provided. And so while we're going to look at different data sources, I use Oklahoma simply to highlight two things. So one, this is, kind of a macro based view of the market and the economy. Our state, does provide updated license counts from regulatory agencies that oversee cannabis in our state. These numbers kind of provide insight from a very high level of the number of business licenses that exist, but that's really the extent of it. So while it's nice to have access to this information, it's really difficult to gather too much competitive information directly from it. However, it does present the um, narrative and very much truth that Oklahoma is a very competitive market. So It tends to be a pretty good, and this is kind of point two, tends to be a pretty good middle ground for medical versus recreational. Oklahoma doesn't have pre-qualifying conditions or a big barrier of entry to gaining a medical patient license. In fact, 400,000 Oklahomans have medical marijuana licenses. So, that represents about 11.5, 12% of our total population. So, with the number of businesses and the number of patients, we do have a very competitive market. And so I think that is crucial to what we're going to talk about today, um, and provides, kind of in the language of software development, a good cannabis sandbox for brands that want to come in and try out products, align themselves with Oklahoma Cannabis for launching brands. All of that stuff is going on in our state right now. So it's a very good proving ground in a very competitive market. So why is data important, right? Today we're going to look at a couple of real world methods for collecting, analyzing, and actioning data that can be accessed through our daily operations. But really, why should we care? Why is this important? So the main reasons that data should be important to us are one, the market in any state, whether it's a state that's just launching, a state that's preparing to launch, or a more mature market, it's very competitive. Okay, so there will generally always be a business that is probably better funded than you, has more experience, or additional market share that you wish to capture, right? And so, in order to best compete, you have to understand your customer base, their changing tendencies, and how best to connect with them. And that's where good data driven processes come into play. Secondly, customers demand quality, and honestly, relationships are time consuming. So it takes time to develop a customer relationship that truly lasts, and sometimes relationships ultimately fail. But being able to collect data throughout the engagement process, even if it results in a lost customer, is crucial to identifying opportunities for improvement and increasing the quality of your product or service. So number three kind of goes to back to relationships and customer engagement, but the acquisition of customers is pretty expensive, right? So starting off, you're going to find that acquiring new customers is not only time consuming, but you will likely have to test several different methods before you find one that best works for your brand, right? So time is money, and this A/B testing, as we call it, where you're sending out a message to one set of prospects and another message to another set of prospects to see which one performs the best, can be costly. So making sure that you're pulling in actionable data from everything that you're doing, all of these activities, is really key to your long-term success. And last but not least, right, like advantages are pretty few in this market, right? So in cannabis, everything is pretty regulated. There's a lot of rules and guidelines, and as we continue to move forward, to likely some sort of decriminalization and legal cannabis across the United States, there's only going to become more and more regulation. And so when products are narrowly, heavily regulated, and there's a very narrow window of opportunity to set yourself apart from another brand, you have to understand that the data that you're generating, your mindset, and the knowledge that you have of your customer base it can be paramount, right? Just in the next couple of slides, we're going to go over a real world case study here, just so I can highlight these 5 points here, right? Um, the case study that we're going to talk about has to do with a transportation distribution partner in our home state of Oklahoma. One of our first clients, named the name of the company is Tactical Transportation. And just to give you kind of an idea of what type of data and how it can be captured and utilized, I thought we would just kind of walk through this. Just to give you some history, they started their business with 2 vans and 3 drivers back in October of 2019. In Oklahoma, the state requires 2 people to every vehicle. So when they launched, they couldn't even run both vans at the same time. They basically, from the beginning, they had outlined their SOPs and remained committed to the process while manually routing their vans, communicating with customers through disjointed methods, and winging it more or less to get their feet under them, I guess. They also approached our team from not only as a potential vendor, but in a consultative manner to help them understand how they could generate, aggregate, and analyze data from the processes early on. And so what we did is we started with some basic steps that I'm going to outline today, and hopefully at the end of this case study, we'll we will have imparted some knowledge, but we'll also go over some other more real world type scenarios, and then at the end of the case study, I will disclose where the company stands today. So the 5 points here that we've kind of outlined are trust the process, listen to the data, identify opportunity, adjust the plan, and implement accordingly. And so we're going to start with the first step here, which is trust the process. So starting off in any new business, it's pretty intimidating, and we really recommend that in the initial stages you trust your process. You've gotten this far. You know how to grow. You know how to manufacture the product you're looking for. You know how to transport in a safe and secure manner. You know how to supplement the cannabis industry if you're in an ancillary role. So really, trust the process that got you to that point, right? But at the same time, it's important to understand that the process that got you to this point and that you will engage in moving forward will generate actionable data that you should begin paying attention to if you haven't already. So from the point of our case study, the process was simple, right? It was find cultivators and product manufacturers to transport product and currency for. The first month that Tactical launched, they performed just 80 tasks that they were in our system. But in these 80 tasks, they were able to begin identifying pieces of data that would drive their entire organization, right? And just remember that data takes time to aggregate. So, you know, trust the process, follow through, make sure that you're collecting data in a simplified method. We're going to walk through some of the tools that are probably already available to you. You may or may not know about them. Make sure that you're collecting relevant data. If I'm not here to tell you what types of data are relevant for your business. We leave that up to the professionals, but make sure that the data that you are collecting is relevant to your performance and to hopefully optimizing processes, and really try to simplify methods. So, we're gonna again walk through some tools that can be used that do a lot of the data aggregation for you. And we suggest to try and make it as simple as possible so that you can get into it. At the same time, you want to make sure that you're practicing, good processes from the beginning. And like we said, that's what got you there. That you have a standardized method of creating actionable data. So if you're engaging in marketing activities such as making phone calls, attending trade shows, or sending emails, you want to find a way to simplify and standardize these activities across your organization so that you can track their effectiveness. If you're making a phone call, you want people to make phone calls in the same manner, the same method, so that you can start to understand what messaging is working, what messaging isn't working. You also want to find simple methods and tools, like I said, to help you pull the data from your daily activities and set a recurring time to go back and begin analyzing some of that data on a regular basis. So in our case study, Tactical had no routes initially, right? Like they were literally picking up the phone, sending emails based off of an industry list that they had obtained, and introducing themselves, but they didn't know how to route vans. They didn't know how to go about picking up and dropping off product in an efficient method and using optimized routes. As they began to bring on new customers, right, they started analyzing ways to service them in a more efficient manner, right? This included tracking mileage, the time to completion, and the potential route structures that may exist. So in the beginning, they were, picking up at point A, dropping off at point B. They may have missed a drop or a pickup in point C because they didn't have a way to enter in a stop once a driver had started a route. They also didn't really understand how to go about changing up route structures. Again, like I said, they really weren't doing much routing at all. So that's kind of some of the issues that they were facing. But through these processes that they were practicing every day, they were starting to gather data that would help them in the future. So the next step is really just to listen to the data. And when I say listen to the data, I mean pay attention to what is being presented from your daily activities. For a grow, this could be any number of things such as water consumption, fluctuations in temperature control, etc. I don't really know. I'm not involved in the growth of cannabis, flower, or plants or anything like that. But there's any number of data points that may be um, coming in from your daily operations. For our case study, it had primarily to do with the requirement for tactical, in this instance, to manage a lot of road with initially very scarce resources, right? So again, at launch, they were operating primarily point to point or pick and drop tasks without a central distribution point, which required them to operate longer than desired routes. As they continued to scale, the data provided insights into how they could better manage these routes through scheduled service across segmented portions of the state. So basically break the state up into different portions, service certain parts of it on Monday, certain parts on Tuesday, but set a schedule. And then they were able to go in and find that they could hit more stops as their business was growing quite rapidly. May have just given that away. They also quickly realized that by establishing a route network, right, and a delivery schedule, they would be able to facilitate more pickups and drop-offs using the same human and vehicle footprint. So now they're getting more out of their human and vehicle resources, right? So they were able to do this because one of the things that they were doing is collecting data in real time, right? So they were going back and they were seeing from a very early stage how long it was taking to complete some of the early pickups and drop-offs, how long drivers were spending on task. They were then able to take that data, funnel it into actionable insights. So, looking at it and saying, okay, if we have to travel 100 miles, then that cuts so much into our day when we could be doing this X amount of stops. They started to identify trends, right? So you start to see trends in data. In this instance, they were starting to see, oh, okay, well, we're going to grower A 5 times a month, and they're selling into the same 50 dispensaries or whatever the number is. We need to set up, maybe we can set that up to where one or two drivers just focus on picking up from them one day a week, whatever it is. But they were able to identify those types of trends. And then ultimately, they started to follow where that data led them, right? So again, just the reference that I used, right? If you have a grower that's out there, you pick up from him, and he's a big client, and you pick up from him once or twice a week, whatever, and then you just deliver product for him that day. That helps you keep conciseness in your business and move very quickly. The next step that we want to talk about really is identifying opportunity, right? So after you've aggregated this data, you've started to analyze it, you're starting to follow where it leads. You're going to see that there are opportunities for you to change things, to change processes, to improve the way you do things manually, right? The way you train people, the types of engagements that your customers have with you. You will see opportunities to improve all of these, right? So truly, opportunity exists everywhere. And especially when launching a business in any industry, right? So having solid data collection and analyzation techniques help us more clearly see where we can improve in the areas that require more focus. So when we look back at our case study with Tactical, they needed a way to more efficiently manage their drivers as well as customer communication. So both of which are possible through the introduction of automated process management software, right? So kind of the business that we're in, but again, I'm not here to sell anything. We're just talking about how data can be used, right? So what this did is this represented an opportunity for them to get a bit more out of their personal comfort zone, okay, by trusting tools, in this case software, which they had access to. So it also meant that an adjustment to their ongoing processes would be necessary. However, this adjustment would ultimately prove to be hugely beneficial by enabling their ability to scale their business, right? So what they were able to do is take some of the automation or take automation and introduce it to the notification process. They started providing their customers with SMS text messaging updates, with automated email updates, with live tracking links, with things that gave more line of sight to their customer. But at the same time, it required Tactical to actually do less from a personnel standpoint. They were no longer having to call every single customer and work through a time that was convenient for them to show up and deliver product or pick up cash. What they were instead able to do is go out, enter a task into a piece of software, assign that task to a driver, and once the task was assigned, then notifications automatically started going out to their customers. If the customer at that point had an issue with any of the timing, then they were able to talk directly to the driver and arrange for another time, or call back to Tactical's dispatch and say, this time doesn't work for me. Can we move it to another date? At that point, the dispatcher was then able to realign that task with customer expectations. So they were able to automate a lot of the manual processes for setting up what is ultimately their service, which is delivering cannabis to dispensaries. One of the first things to understand about data analytics really is that the exposure of the inefficiency in manual processes is highly likely. So you're going to see manual processes get exposed for how inefficient they truly are. And by no means am I suggesting that humans can be completely replaced by software, but when you're combing through the data from your operations, you will most likely start to see where processes can be enhanced, simplified, and more adequately managed in a standardized way through software introduction. So in our case study, we were able to provide tools that automated notification to customers, provided live tracking, product receipts, direct communication, as I highlighted, with the transportation agent throughout the entire course of the task performance. So once the driver, once the buyer or seller receives notification that the driver has been assigned to their task, they're immediately able to communicate with that person. And then you go back to those manual communication platforms, right? Your phone calls, text messaging, all of which could be done through the app, but it still involves the human being, obviously. So really, the bullet points here are nothing more than to leverage tools to bring areas for improvement into focus. Use the analytics tools that are made available to you, which we're going to go over here in just a second, and then really just prepare for adjustment to processes. No, understand that it's likely you're likely going to see some exposure to processes that need enhancement, and then prepare to adjust those processes as needed. Don't make a knee-jerk reaction to it, but actually set out a plan to prepare to augment those. The next step is adjust the plan. So, once you have identified the areas for improvement through your data aggregation and analysis, you will likely determine that you need to make some adjustments to your plan of action. We're not going to spend a lot of time here just because everybody's business is different and therefore action plans will certainly vary. However, we just want to note that this is really where the rubber meets the road, pun intended there. But it's important really to focus again on the process. So making adjustments, aligning resources, and setting a timeline for implementation all help in rolling out changes to your daily operations, right? In our case study, the implementation of software-driven processes such as route optimization, driver process tracking through a mobile app, and centralized dispatch platform were all adjustments made to Tactical's operational structure. The ability to import delivery addresses for a day and have a tool that determines the best routing of their drivers based on mileage dramatically increased their operational efficiency from a daily planning and task performance standpoint. So when we look at where we were able to actually help and where they were able to save time, it's in the pre-planning before the actual uh, completion of the service that makes them money, right? So when we talk about growers or dispensaries, right? Growing the product, um, you know, growing the product, that's the process. Selling the product is what makes you money. Retailers selling product makes money. Ultimately, it has to end in a sell. But if you can get better in and more efficient in the processes leading up to the sell, ultimately your margins get better. You make more money. The last step here is to implement accordingly, right? So again, I mentioned before, don't make any knee-jerk reactions to anything, but really once it's time to implement your plan, uh, you know, we just want to offer a couple of points to keep in mind throughout that process, right? So the first one is really, we suggest that you focus on impactful items. Sometimes we say get the low-hanging fruit, but we've found that more often than not, when you're making changes to operational processes, that focusing on the ones that have a larger perceived impact could actually be more beneficial, not only for your customers, but also from getting buy-in from your entire organization. Generally people don't like change, and so if you can introduce change that has a large impact up front, that can go a long way in getting people to sign on to the new process implementation. Educate personnel on reasoning. I mean, this is, tried and true, but if your team understands the reason behind automation or the reason behind process control is to benefit the organization and not remove them from the organization, they are far more likely to sign on and really honestly try to not try to sabotage your efforts, right? Automation, the word automation, the word software automation, process control, those phrases tend to scare people a little bit, but ultimately if you can tell them that by implementing some of these things we're going to get far more efficient and ultimately everybody makes more money, hopefully you can get buy-in. And then this is super important, but continue to aggregate data throughout the process, right? So while you're going through the implementation process, make sure that you're continuing to watch the data and see how the needle is starting to move. You may not see immediate results in some of the process implementation that you embark on, but it's important that just because you are actioning the data, that you still are collecting, analyzing, and listening to where that data is leading. So just to kind of put a bow on the case study conclusion, today, our partner is one of the largest transporters in the state of Oklahoma. They deliver more than 1,000 dispensaries, which represents roughly about 50% market share in our state on a monthly basis, and they complete on average 130 tasks a day. So if you remember at the beginning of the case study, I told you that the first month they were on, they were using software to kind of drive their business. They completed 80 tasks. Now they complete more than 1.5 times that in a single day. So pretty impressive stuff from those guys. Now let's just kind of move on to looking at some methods of where you might start to find relevant data, right? Like we've done a real world example of how data aggregation, analysis, and application can help grow a cannabis related business. Now we want to talk about where you might find this data as you launch or grow a business in the industry, right? So again, data is everywhere, and when you're spinning up and getting started, uh, there's some key uh, resources that are going to provide very relevant data for you, right? One is your prospects. So you undoubtedly either generate, buy, or otherwise obtain prospect lists. In doing so, you have your first opportunity to begin collecting relevant data, right? Once you start marketing to them, these people or these businesses are going to funnel one way or another. They're either going to become customers and clients, move through your sales funnel, or they're going to fall out of your sales funnel, right? When once you do start to actually engage in business, your current customers are going to be a great source of data for you. Okay, current customers provide perhaps the best source of ongoing data. They alert you to trends through their product service selection. They drive loyalty rewards programs, and they establish anchor product lines. So you can learn so much from current customers, including average time to convert from a prospect to a customer, purchase intervals, and much more, right? So you're always, most people do pay attention to current customers, but we would be remiss if we didn't point that out. Past customers, they also present opportunity as well. We look at past customers as separate from the next demo, which is lost customers in our nomenclature. A past customer would be more like an aging customer or someone who purchased from you previously, remains engaged in your marketing efforts. So, they might still be following you on social media, they're opening emails, they're clicking on links, they visit your site, but for one reason or another, they haven't purchased recently. They are still engageable, but difficult to convert again. So this type of customer offers a good opportunity for what we call A/B testing. I mentioned that earlier before, in that you can segment them out from your new customer, new prospect list, current customers, and try different approaches that maybe are a blend of the two messaging strategies for your other demos, your current customers and your prospects, or your lost customers. Um, and then you can, offer them a mix of messaging to see what really brings somebody back into your organization. Lost customers are people who have engaged previously on some level, but not converted, right? So maybe they visited your store, but didn't purchase. They put items in an online cart, but didn't check out. Or they called inquiring about your service, have maybe been presented a proposal and not closed. So whatever it may be, there is data that can be derived from this. Lost customers would also be somebody, after a set period of time that may have purchased from you in the beginning, have never purchased again, and have kind of just fallen off the face of the earth. There is data that can be generated from that. And understanding, why you lose a sale is just as important as understanding why you gained a sale. Industry trends are another source of data. So without going into different publications or industry sites, we're going to have a slide here in a second that talks about kind of news aggregation. There's plenty of data analysis being done by news outlets. Software companies do it. Um, they'll put out reports and stuff, and others who have access to large amounts of data, right? Or there's any number of people that are probably going to email you after a weekend here, asking to give you some sort of insight. Um, Regulatory agencies. I showed a slide earlier that highlighted the type of data that's being sent out from the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority, which is the regulatory agency here. Every state has some government agency overseeing their cannabis program, and they are likely releasing data. If they aren't, or if there is something you want to potentially see, just ask them. Most of it should be accessible through a FOIA request. So, Freedom of Information Act for anyone that needs that. So, moving to kind of how data can be captured, right? So we just highlighted some potential sources for relevant data, but how do we actually go about capturing it and capturing data that's specific to our business, right? Truthfully, just one or two of these capture points likely won't get you where you want to be. So it's a best practice to do your research when setting up your business to see what methods are going to be best suited for what you want to accomplish and what tools work best together, right? So while many small businesses use, you know, pieces of software like QuickBooks, and most all point of sale software tools integrate directly with QuickBooks, cannabis related businesses present challenges in their collection of money. So you will want to make sure that all the pieces of the software ecosystem really collaborate and provide access to functionality in the data that your business demands, right? So do your research. In the end, cannabis businesses are really different than any other beast out there. From a micro level, uh, data collection methods that you as a business owner can manage directly. Data is available from marketing activities, from your point of sales tools, from order fulfillment, and social media, just to name a couple of micro level data sources, or how you can capture data. We're going to walk through actually some social media examples here in just a second, as well as some other marketing activities. So when we pull back a bit and start to look at macro level data aggregation, you may find items such as industry studies, broader market trends, and corporate periodic reports. Those may help a little bit. And then also, we're going to show an example here in just a second of the types of data that comes out from news sources and how to kind of parse through that, or read between the lines. In either instance, right, micro or macro, you have to understand what you are looking for, all right? So let's take, for example, some data coming out of another state. So in this slide titled "It's all in the details," we highlight some information that was published from multiple sources in August of 2021, as it relates to Humboldt County harvest, right? And I understand this slide is kind of messy and doesn't look good, and I promise this is the worst slide in my deck. But the two quotes are that you're seeing are from separate articles, both again from August of 2021, both referencing falling cannabis prices in Northern California. So the chart, on the other hand, is from a site that tracks cannabis prices across the United States, aggregating data from various sources to come up with what's called the spot and forward-looking pricing data. The top clip states that outdoor farmers in California are seeing wholesale prices of $200 to $500, down from $800 to $1,000. The second clip at the bottom says the average price per pound is around $700, which is way down. Now, there's a bit of a discrepancy there between 200 and 500 and 700 and 700 and 1,000 from a year ago. And so basically, if you read through these articles, what you might gather, right, is that outdoor flower in California, in Northern California, goes from anywhere from $200 to $1,000 a pound. And that's hard to gauge your business off of, and to make forecasted sales for whatever that purpose may be. At the same time, doing a simple Google search takes you to the cannabis benchmark spot index for the same week, and you see that cannabis spot index decreased 2.5% to $1,476 a pound. So I really kind of point all of this out to say that, the two discrepancies in pricing aside, as we don't really know if that is based on any aggregation or just one outdoor farmer talking to one media outlet and another talking to another media outlet. But what we can deduce from this is that in relation to the national average, California was involved in a highly deflationary market, most likely due to oversupply, right? Further, when you look to the national average, you see a downward trend as you move to the right on the chart. So all of this could be of use when understanding the types of market scenarios that may play out in any state, and could also help a new business understand how volatility may affect their own cannabis business, right? If you can start to understand what pricing may look like moving forward, you can anticipate how your business will have to adapt and potentially bring down the price of production in order to still be profitable in deflationary markets. That's just a quick example of how some very broad-based news organizations and the data that they produce can be utilized by an individual business owner. When we start to look at digital marketing, right? And this is back to kind of the micro side of things. But When we start to look at marketing related examples of how data can be aggregated, analyzed, and actioned, digital marketing tools, including email platforms such as MailChimp and social media such as Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, all provide basic data analysis that can be used to better understand your audience, makeup, and engagement. Aside from internal data tools, provided by the platforms, you can also engage digital marketing experts who can help you refine your messaging to increase engagement and further grow your audience. Although having insight from day one is never really a bad thing, right? So let's take a look at some insights that can be gained from easily accessible tools provided in these individual platforms. So just a very quick note here to differentiate between the three social media platforms that most everyone uses for marketing purposes, right? There's commonality between Facebook and Instagram audiences since they're both owned by Facebook or Meta now. However, the audience demographics could also differ slightly based on age primarily. Either way, the two platforms offer a good opportunity to again A/B test posts to see what generates the best engagement for your business. Additionally, there are several third-party products out there that can aggregate and post content to multiple platforms. So tools like Hootsuite can help you mix up content or share the same content across multiple channels in a very easy to do so method. Twitter brings a different audience to your business kind of altogether. And since the format of content shared on Twitter is completely different than Facebook or Instagram, this really does kind of make sense. Still, though, there are tools that can be used in Twitter that are much in the same style as those in Facebook and Instagram for the purpose of understanding your audience and how they engage your business. For our example of an individual platform, we're just going to take a look at Twitter here. So taking a look at an example of engagement analytics from the Twitter platform, we can start to see that data as it relates to individual post performance and overall engagement. Additionally, you can track your user follower growth as well as profile visits. Up on the slide, you'll see that I have impressions, which equals how many accounts saw your post. And then new followers, obviously you can track followers month over month, year over year. You can see what your top tweet was for the month. All of these things start to provide you with actionable data that you can go back and use to refine messaging going forward. Again, this can all be useful in helping guide your messaging and ongoing content strategy. Messaging for B2B differs greatly from messaging for B2C. Business owners want clear and concise input on how your product or service is going to grow their business. In the age of social media and with the overwhelming amount of content that we all receive, it's imperative that you follow the data that is aggregated from your marketing in order to clue in on messaging that is truly engaging your audience and not just flashing before their eyes. The worst thing you can do is put a lot of time and effort into a content strategy only to have people scroll right by it. Next, we're going to take a look at an example of data that is readily available from your own website. So you can see my uh, slide titles are starting to get a little bit punnier as we move along. I think that's primarily because of the amount of time that I put into this presentation. But um, this one is titled Data in Your Sites. So we'll not spend too much time here, as most likely everyone is aware of the data insights that exist in their website. So whether you're using like WordPress or Squarespace or something else, you can find some very basic information such as number of monthly visitors, bounce rate, time of engagement, location of visitors, and referral sources and keywords that are being searched, right? Um, if you want to dig deeper, into website analytics, you can always connect Google Analytics to gather additional information. The key here is that this is a very broad look at those people and individuals that are coming to your website. Whether they are finding you through social media, through a search, or through direct traffic, helps you better understand where your messaging is truly hitting. If you post something to Twitter that gets a bunch of likes and shares, you may see a direct correlation to the traffic to your website, which in turn provides justification that the message was engaging. If you receive a contact form completion or get a phone call asking about your product or service, you can then go back and track the entire successful sales process to a social media post, right? So this is the type of feedback that can help you continue to refine that messaging in order to drive further engagement in sales. So the last example that we're going to look at today is from an email campaign. And you can link almost any email tool, such as MailChimp, to your website, contact forms to gather subscribers to your content, uh, or you can promote it in individual links on social media as well. The same goes for, like I said, for social media. When it comes to email, we have found that engagement within the cannabis industry is relatively high. There's a pun too, compared to other industries. There seems to be a desire for knowledge among the community and truly a willingness for some to share content and ideas, right? So the goal with any content strategy is to be relevant and add something to the ongoing discussion. When it comes to data that is available in email marketing tools, you'll find some of the same insights that are available in website and social. But where we see added benefit is tracking what is called the open rate or click-throughs. The open rate is exactly as it sounds. It's the rate at which people open your email instead of just discarding it to deleted items. So this can help. This can be helpful in identifying who is paying attention to your content and truly who isn't. Right. Click-throughs are a bit more granular. They can actually help you identify specific pieces of content that are gathering interest of your audience. A linked image back to your website or your e-commerce online store, or linked text in an email can show you specific web pages or products that people are interested in learning more about. So this, email lists that you've cultivated yourself allow you to engage contacts with content that they subscribe to. So if somebody comes to your website, signs up for your email list or whatever, that person is there explicitly saying, "I want to know what you're doing. Please send me some content." So that's a good lead in the sales world. Um, it also allows you to promote products and track clicks. So you can announce new products, announce new services through email. And if people, if you have linked images and linked text, people can click on that and you can start to see where people are gravitating to as far as product and service offerings. And at the same time, ongoing content in any method, whether it's social media or email or blogging, whatever it is, ongoing content helps you grow your voice and authority on the cannabis industry. The in any new business, establishing yourself as an authority takes time, and it takes good content and relevant insight. So just to kind of wrap it up here, understanding data in a cannabis-related endeavor begins with trusting the process and following where data leads can help optimize any business. So we're firm believers, obviously, as software developers, that data is important. We hope that you can start to see some ways in which and methods, uh, sources of data that can be relevant to you, and we wish everybody the best in their endeavor in this industry, because we all want to see the industry certainly succeed. Just a few references here, as I did use some sites directly. If anybody is interested in that, those are on this page. And last but not least, if anyone ever has any questions or would like to contact us directly, you can go to our website or email me at the email address below. Thank you for your time.